Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai. Mangamai Yamunamai ki jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. No reprint. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining this morning. Greetings from Sri Dham Mayapur. We continue study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the second canto, chapter 7. And today's verse is number 17. Jayan gunar avarajo pyadite sutanam lokan vichakrama iman yadatadi yajnyaha shmam vamanena jagrihe tripadachalena yajnyam rite paticharan prabhubir nachalyaha Yayan gunar avarajo pyadite sutanam lokan vichakrama iman yadatadi yajnyaha shmam vamanena jagrihe tripada chalena yajnyam rite paticharan prabhubir nachalyaha Jayan gunar avarajo pyadite sutanam lokan vichakrama iman yadatadhi yajna shmam vamanena jagrihe tripadat chalena yajnyam rite paticharan prabhubir nachalya. Please chant.
Hare Krishna. Jayan gunera avarjopi atite sutanam lokan vichakramiman yadathadi yagyaha kshamam vamanena jagrahe tripade chalena yatnam rate paticharan prabhubirna chalyaha.
Jayan gunair avarajo pyadite sutanam lokan vichakrama imam yad atadhiyajnyaha shamam pamanena jagrihe tripadachalena yachnan rute paticharan prabhubhir nachalyaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Jayan guner avrajo api adite sutanam lokan vichkrama imam yad atadhi yagya chamam vamanena jagrihe tripad chalena Yachinamrite pati charana prabhu birna chalya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
जयं गुणैरवरजोऽपि अदितेः श्रुतानं लोकन् विचाक्रम इमं यद् अथ धियज्ञः क्षमं वमेनेन जगृहे त्रिपदा छलेन यज्ञं ऋते पथि चारन् प्रभुभिर्न चलया.
Anyone else? Jayan, the greatest, gunahai, by qualities, avarajaha, transcendental, api, although he is so, aditehe, of aditi, sutanam, of all the sons known as adityas, lokan, the planets, vichakrame, surpassed, iman, in this universe, yat, the one who, ata, therefore, adi yajnaha, the supreme personality of Godhead, shmam, all the lands, vamanena, the incarnation of Vamana, jagrihe, accepted, tripada, 3 steps, chalena, by pretension, yachnyam, begging, rite, without, pati charan, passing over the right path, rabhu bihi, by authorities, na, never to be, chalyaha, to be bereft of. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. The Lord, although transcendental to all material modes, still surpassed all the qualities of the sons of Aditi, known as the Adityas. The Lord appeared as the youngest son of Aditi, and because he surpassed all the planets of the universe, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the pretense of asking for a measurement of 3 footsteps of land, he took away all the lands of Bali Maharaj. He asked simply because without begging, no authority can take one's rightful possession. And purport by Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The history of Bali Maharaj and his charity to Vamanadev is described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Bali Maharaj conquered all the planets of the universe by rightful possession. A king can conquer others by strength, and such possession is considered to be rightful. So Bali Maharaj possessed all the lands of the universe, and he happened to be charitably disposed toward the Brahmanas. The Lord, therefore, pretended to be a beggar Brahmana, and he asked Bali Maharaj for a measurement of 3 footsteps of land. The Lord, as the proprietor of everything, could take from Bali Maharaj all the land he possessed, but he did not do so because Bali Maharaj possessed all those lands by king's rights. When Bali Maharaj was asked by Lord Vamana for such small charity, Bali Maharaj's spiritual master, namely Shukracharya, objected to this proposal because he knew that Vamanadev was Vishnu himself pretending to be a beggar. Bali Maharaj did not agree to abide by the order of his spiritual master when he understood that the beggar was Vishnu himself, and he at once agreed to give him in charity the land requested. By this agreement, Lord Vamana covered all the lands of the universe with his first 2 steps, and then asked Bali Maharaj where to place the third step. Bali Maharaj was very glad to receive the Lord's remaining step upon his head. And thus Bali Maharaj, instead of losing everything he possessed, was blessed by the Lord's, becoming his constant companion and doorman. I read that right. He became his doorman. So, by giving everything to the cause of the Lord, one does not lose anything, but he gains everything that he could never otherwise expect. The translation again. The Lord, although transcendental to all material modes, still surpassed all the qualities of the sons of Aditi, known as the Adityas. The Lord appeared as the youngest son of Aditi, and because he surpassed all the planets of the universe, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the pretense of asking for a measurement of 3-foot steps of land, he took away all the lands of Bali Maharaj. He asked, simply because without begging, no authority can take one's rightful possession. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswate Devi Gaura Bhattacharya Nirvishesha Srimati Krishna Deshakari Om Ajnanatirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyas Chakpa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Welcome again. So we're going through the scheduled incarnations and their specific functions. And so we're just getting a really quick summary of the different topics that are going to come up in Srimad Bhagavatam. And so we could spend this class talking about Lord Vamanadev. It's a great pastime. Srila Prabhupada very expertly summarized it in his purport. What I want to do today is I want to focus on that last line of the purport, because this is these stories that we read aren't just for our entertainment. They're for understanding how to apply Krishna consciousness properly into our lives. The stories are nice because they inspire us. They're very enlivening to hear. But deeper than the story, which is enlivening, is the lesson that we can learn, so that we can see the particular devotees that are benefiting from the Lord's mercy, and we can figure out a way to actually apply that in our lives, right? Because there's many different kinds of devotees, right? A devotee just means that one who accepts Lord Vishnu as the Supreme Lord, right? But some just accept him casually, but they still very much want to enjoy materially. That's the one extreme. And then the other extreme is that they just completely accept the Supreme Lord. Whatever he wants, that's what they do, right? And there's so many shades of gray in between, right? So we live somewhere in between. And so the last sentence, or the last part of this purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, by giving everything to the cause of the Lord, one does not lose anything, but he gains everything that he could never otherwise expect. So today I want to talk about the concept of Atmanivedana, which means full surrender. It means giving the self. Now the term Atma is sometimes described in different ways. It depends on who you're asking. Some people say it means the self, the spirit soul. Some people say it means the mind. Some people will say it means the body. And when speaking of this concept, Srila Prabhupada would often point out that actually we have to surrender all of these things to the Supreme Lord. We surrender, we are spirit soul, so we surrender, but since we are in these bodies, which it's a self-inflicted prison, we also should engage these bodies while we have them in the service of Krishna. Because these bodies are here, they're given to us because of our conditioning, because of our desires. So if we properly use them in the service of Krishna with no personal desires, Anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karma dinabhritam anukuyena krishnanu shilam bhakti. We shouldn't have any other desires, outside desires. It should be pure, unalloyed. We shouldn't be expecting anything in return. And when we can successfully do that, then only are the senses purified, the mind purified, etc. And then all that's left is the pure spirit, right? Which is suitable to then return back, home back to Godhead, to Krishna. So regarding Atma Nivedana, I want to read a few excerpts that Srila Prabhupada has written. This first one comes from Nectar of Devotion, chapter 11. This is Srila Prabhupada's summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And so Srila Prabhupada writes, regarding complete self-surrender, there is a nice description in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 29th chapter, verse 34, where the Lord says, quote, a person who has completely surrendered unto me and has completely given up all other activities is protected by me personally, both in this life and in the next. In other words, I wish to help him become more and more advanced in spiritual life. I'm going to pause there for a moment because that reminds me of something that Srila Prabhupada was writing in his purport. We see this example of Vamanadev and Bali Maharaj. And since Bali Maharaj actually surrendered his whole self to Lord Vamanadev, and from most people's perspective, they would think, well, you've just given everything away. How could you expect any sort of happiness? You don't have anything left. But we found that when he did that, when he actually gave himself to the Lord completely and spontaneously, this was a natural thing for him to do. He wanted to do this. Since he did that, the Lord, of course, he's a very personable Supreme Lord, and so he reciprocates. And so when this devotee gave everything to him, then the Lord said, okay, now I will become your doorkeeper. And he actually stands right there on Bali Maharaj's door, always protecting him like that. So when Srila Prabhupada is writing here, it's reminding me of that Krishna actually wants to protect the devotee both in this life and the next life. He continuously wants to protect anyone who is sincerely trying to cultivate their Krishna consciousness, to engage in bhakti. We'll continue Nectar of Devotion, chapter 11. Such a person is to be understood as having already achieved sharshti, which is a type of liberation where you have equal opulences with the Supreme. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that as soon as a person surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna, Krishna takes charge of him and gives him a guarantee of protection from all sinful reactions. He also instructs from within so that the devotee may very quickly make advancement towards spiritual perfection. This self-surrender is called Atma Nivedana. Full self-surrender means not only surrendering one's spirit, not only surrendering oneself as spirit soul, but also surrendering one's mind and body to the service of the Lord. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung a nice song in this connection. While offering himself as a fully surrendered soul, he said, quote, my mind, my household affairs, my body, whatever is in my possession, my dear Lord, I offer to you for your service. Now you can do with them as you like. You are the supreme possessor of everything. So if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can give me protection. All authority belongs to you. I have nothing to claim as my own, unquote. Srila Prabhupada continues. If one is actually surrendered, in body and soul, he should always remember that his only concern is to be engaged in the service of the Lord. Very important instructions from Srila Prabhupada and from Srila Rupa Goswami. The next excerpt I would like to read is Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.19, and he brings up the subject matter of today's class. He says, so Bali Maharaj dedicated Atmanivedana, everything, his property, his personal body, everything. So in exchange, Vamana, Lord Vamana, became his doorkeeper. So Vamanadev said, my dear Bali Maharaj, you are so great a devotee. So in return for your service, I shall remain always your doorkeeper. End quote. So by offering everything to Krishna, nobody is loser. You must always remember, they are gainer, the best gainer, because after all, everything belongs to Krishna. Why should we foolishly say, it is mine, aham mameti, janasya mohoyam? This is called illusion. It is mine, it is mine. The whole world is going on like that. Aham mameti. We are Americans, we are Indians, this belongs to me, that belongs to you. We make such, I mean to say, shareholder, but shareholder for others' property. Everything belongs to God, not only in this world, there are many millions of planets. Sarvaloka Maheshwara. Loka means planet. Krishna says Sarvaloka Maheshwara. Bhoktaram Yasatapa, some Sarvaloka Maheshwara. He is the proprietor. But we are dividing. This is America, this is India. But how long will you remain American and Indian? Say 50 years? Then, if you are going to be a dog, then who is saving your country? This is going on. Nothing belongs to us except everything belongs to Krishna. And we are all offspring of Krishna. Everyone has got the right to the Father's property, but not to encroach on others' property. If people accept this philosophy, then the whole world becomes Vaikuntha. There is no quarrel. There is no everything becomes happy, right? So Srila Prabhupada is pointing out several verses here describing Bhagavad Gita 5.29, how the Supreme Lord is the Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, the supreme controller of all of the planets. He's also quoting Sri Upanishad Mantra 1, how everything animate and inanimate is controlled and owned by the Supreme Lord. And so if we can act in this, according to this concept, this Islavasha concept, that everything belongs to Krishna, and we actually act knowing that nothing is actually ours, that we are just servants of the owner, and we use it according to his desires. Not that we take what's his and we use it however we want it, but we actually understand through Shastra, through the instructions of the Guru, and through the examples of the sadhus, how each thing is to be utilized properly in devotional service. If we can act in this way, Srila Prabhupada says, then the whole world becomes Vaikuntha, right? Because spirituality, this is a state of mind. When we properly exercise our free will to be servants of Krishna, and we utilize everything in Krishna's service, then immediately it's liberation. So the whole world becomes Vaikuntha. There's no quarrel, because I'm not claiming something that you're also claiming, so there's no quarrel, right? Everyone's happy, everyone's satisfied. The next excerpt that I would like to read, this is kind of a long one. This is from Harinam Chintamani, chapter 13. I recommend that everyone just read this book. It's amazing. But I'm only going to read a small portion because we are constrained with time. So, Gadai Goranga Jaya Janava Jivana Sita Dvaita Jaya Jaya Gora Bhaktagana. Overcome with prema, Haridas recited the last offense in chanting the holy name. Listen, my Lord, this offense is the lowest of all. With this offense, one cannot get prema. It is the attitude which is exactly opposite to surrender to the Lord. Having extirpated the first 9 offenses, the devotees should culture full surrender to the name. According to the scriptures, there are 6 types of surrender which are impossible to explain in detail. In brief, they are as follows. So the intro to that is just saying that full surrender is absolutely important. It is a prerequisite to going back to Godhead. If one thinks that one can cheat the system and still try to enjoy and control, and then also get to the, independently from Krishna and also rejoin Krishna's pastimes, then they are mistaken. So here are the 6. Number 1, accepting everything favorable for the service of the Lord. So anytime something's favorable for the service of the Lord, you accept it. Number 2, rejecting everything unfavorable for service to the Lord. That means anything that you cannot see the connection, you cannot see that it's actually helping you in your service of the Supreme Lord, that's rejected. Now, everything can be used in the service of the Lord, but if you can't use it in the service of the Lord, you reject it, or you figure out how it actually can be used, right? But otherwise, you reject. That's number 2. Accept things favorable, reject things that are not favorable. Number 3, having faith in Krishna as one's protector. Now, this means one's only protector, right? So we understand that Krishna is the protector. No one else is my protector. Not your father, not your president, not your anything else, nothing else, not your favorite movie star, not your, mentor who's teaching you how to become a millionaire. No one. Krishna is one's protector, right? The spiritual master is the transparent medium to Krishna, so you can say also he is your protector, but Shakshad Hari Tvena, he's not different from Krishna in that regard. Number 4, knowing that Krishna is one's knowing that Krishna is one's preserver and maintainer. So it means he is preserving your existence. That's why you're there, and he's maintaining. Number 5, thinking oneself as low and worthless. Of course, this means humility, not low self-esteem. It has been explained by many great souls that the difference between low self-esteem and humility is that low self-esteem is when you think less of yourself. Oh, I'm the worst this, I'm the worst that. And humility is when you think less of yourself. Meaning you're just thinking of Krishna. You're not worried about, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. You're not even identifying with separate from Krishna. You just understand, I'm a servant to Krishna, and this is how I serve Krishna. So it's important to note what it means like that. We're insignificant servants of Krishna because we're this infinitesimal part of the infinite Krishnas. So in that sense, we have to understand our position. And number 6, being self-surrendered. So this is continuing. If one does not culture these attitudes while chanting, one will simply accumulate material in life. Those things which always help increase devotion should be accepted in one's life with relish. Those things which impede devotion should be rejected in disgust. One should believe that other than Krishna, there is no one to whom to depend, and that Krishna alone is one's maintainer. One should think that one is very low and unqualified with no possessions, right? Because everything belongs to Krishna. So what do I have? As an eternal servant of Krishna, one will be willing to do anything that Krishna desires. To believe that one is the doer, the giver, the protector, the one that owns this body, house, wife, and offspring. To think oneself to be a Brahmana or Shudra, husband or wife, citizen or king. This should all be rejected. Instead, centering one's thoughts on Krishna, one should think of Krishna as the controller and doer, and that Krishna's desire is the main thing, right? It's not my desire, and that's what I act on. It's what's Krishna's desire, and how can I act on that? One will do as Krishna desires, not as one independently wants to do. By Krishna's wish, I will stay in this world, and by Krishna's wish, I will cross over it. If there is pain, if there is rejoicing, still I am Krishna's servant, right? This has to be the depth of our determination to serve Krishna. Whether it doesn't matter if there's pleasure or there's pain, I know this is my position. I will serve Krishna. Continuing, by his will, he will give mercy to the jivas. My material enjoyment and renunciation are all dependent on Krishna. When this attitude is present, it is called Atmanivedana, or self-surrender. When these 6 types of Sharanagati, full surrender, are not present in an individual, he possesses the intelligence of I and mine. Such a person is considered a low rascal because he believes that he is the doer, that the world is his, that he is the creator of his destiny and enjoyer of the fruits of his activities, that he is his own protector and maintainer, and these are his wife, brothers, sons, and daughters, and that by his own endeavor he can achieve all perfection and glory, right? Not seeing Krishna in any of those things. They're seeing themselves as all of the things that Krishna actually is. Continuing, such people are proud of the power of their own knowledge. Not considering the Lord's control, they think that by their own brain they can increase and extend the arts and sciences. If people hear the glories of the holy name, they do not believe them. Or if they do chant Krishna's name, it is only out of social custom. This is interesting because it's saying that some people can actually chant but still be materialists, right? Being pretenders and cheaters, they may chant the name and Hela Namabas, but it will never give, they will never get prema. This offense is due to being boundly tight by Maya, and deliverance is very difficult. However, one can see that there are some people who, taking up the name and reaching the level of Shuddha Bhakti, have completely given up material attachment and humbly worship Krishna's lotus feet and sing his name. One should seek out this type of person, take his association, and serve him with the desire to give up material attachment. Gradually, one will become fixed in the name, and the concept of I and mine will go away as one transcends attachment to Maya. Giving up the false mentality, one will culture full surrender, which is the constitutional position of the jiva and the very nature of bhakti. By this, one can get prema. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here that we aspiring devotees all must give up this concept of I and mine. And when one does that and cultures full surrender, then that is the constitutional position of the jiva, right? That's our natural position. Right now, we're dealing with our conditioned nature because of misuse of our free will, wanting to be independent controllers and enjoyers, separate from Krishna. But when we purify that consciousness, understand that no, we are the servant of Krishna, and we can understand how we can use everything in Krishna's service, then and only then can one achieve prema, right? One has to come to this position. And Lord Vamanadev showed how we can do that. And Bali Maharaj, he helped show how we can do that. In the beginning of today's verse, it was mentioning that although he's transcendental to all these notes, he came into the family of the Devatas to show how the Devatas are meant to properly act, right? He showed the best example. And we're going to get more to that in a moment. I'm actually going to skip over a bunch of this. Anyway, I recommend reading Harinam Chintamani, especially chapter 13, but read it all. I also wanted to read some quotes from Jaiva Dharma, which are amazing, but I'm going to skip ahead because I found something that is very much applicable to us, that we all would do to hear, accept, understand, and apply this knowledge. And this is coming from the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 1st chapter. This is the story of Dadichi. So Dadichi when you're reading about the Vritrasura and Indra, the fight that happened there, we find that Indra couldn't defeat Vritrasura on his own. So he was instructed, you go to Dadichi and you ask him for his bones. He's a very powerful Brahmana. And so his bones actually possess so much potency that if you make a weapon, a thunderbolt, out of the bones of this Brahmana, then that will be able to defeat Vritrasura. Right. So the demigods went and they approached the Dadichi and they asked him, hey, do you mind dying so that we can take your bones so that we can, destroy this demon that's after us? So in the purport to Canto 6, the first chapter, text number 6, Srila Prabhupada writes, this is very instructive for us. The Krishna consciousness movement needs many exalted, learned persons who will sacrifice their lives to revive God consciousness throughout the world. We therefore invite all men and women advanced in knowledge to join the Krishna consciousness movement and sacrifice their lives for the great cause of reviving God consciousness of human society. I want to read a little bit of what Dadichi said, because it's actually amazing when the demigods approached him, and they're basically asking him to leave his body so that his bones can be used in the service of the Lord. And naturally, Dadichi, of course he'll do it. He's a devotee, right? But he kind of wanted to mess with the demigods and give them some instructions, right? He didn't want to just do it. Obviously, he would have just done it, but he wanted to take an opportunity to preach to the demigods. The demigods are meant to be devotees of the Lord, right? They at least accept Lord Vishnu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why they're demigods, right? But the demigods, they have this tendency that anytime they're in trouble, they definitely approach Lord Vishnu because they know that he's the only protector. But when things are going well in life, when they're just enjoying, sometimes they kind of forget, right? They kind of forget and they think, okay, no, we're just, we're enjoying and this is our position. We've earned this position and therefore we should, we can enjoy. And when they get in that state of mind, that's their downfall. And sometimes the demons actually take control, right? We saw in the example of Bali Maharaj, the demons took over. In the example there of Vritrasura, again, the demons took over. Hiranyakashipu, he took over. There are many instances where the demigods sort of become lax in their worship. The demons actually become more powerful. They take over, the entire universe. And then the demigods, of course, they run to Lord Vishnu and they pray and then they're given a solution. So the solution given here was to go to this Brahmana Dadichi, ask him for his bones, create this weapon, and then destroy Vritrasura. So Dadichi, wanting to preach to the Devatas a little bit before engaging in his service, he kind of messed with them. So sixth canto, chapter 10, verse 2. O King Parikshit, following the Lord's instructions, the demigods approached Dadichi, the son of Atharva. He was very liberal, and when they begged him to give them his body, he at once partially agreed. However, just to hear religious instructions from them, he smiled and jokingly spoke as follows. So he's messing with them. He says this: O elevated demigods, at the time of death, severe unbearable pain takes away the consciousness of all living entities who have accepted material bodies. Don't you know about this pain? So he's saying, like, you're asking me to do this and it's torture. Don't you know that? Right? And then he continues, in this material world, every living entity is very much addicted to his material body. Struggling to keep his body forever, everyone tries to protect it by all means, even at the sacrifice of all his possessions. Therefore, who would be prepared to deliver his body to anyone, even if it were demanded by Lord Vishnu? Right? So he's sort of cutting jokes at the demigods because they're the ones who are also very much addicted to their material body, struggling to keep the body forever, trying to protect it by all means, etc. But the demigods replied, and this is where it gets really funny, because we see that the demigods actually understand the philosophy properly. They just don't know how to completely apply it, right? So here they are. This is what they say. This is how they respond. O exalted Brahmana, pious persons like you, whose activities are praiseworthy, are very kind and affectionate to people in general. What can't such pious souls give for the benefit of others? They can give everything, including their bodies. Those who are too self-interested beg something from others, not knowing of others' pain. But if the beggar knew the difficulty of the giver, he would not ask for anything. Similarly, he who is able to give charity does not know the beggar's difficulty, for otherwise he would not refuse to give the beggar anything he might want as charity. Right? So the Devatas, they're trying to, say, yeah, you're saying we don't know your difficulty, but you also don't know our difficulty. We're having so since we're begging from you, then you should be magnanimous and just do what we say. So then the great sage Dadichi continued. He said, just to hear from you about religious principles, I refuse to offer my body at your request. Now, and he continues to mess with him. Now, although my body is extremely dear to me, I must give it up for your better purposes, since I know that it will leave me today or tomorrow. So he's saying, the material body is temporary. It's, and it's best to give it up in the service of Krishna. And so he had that opportunity, and as soon as he got that opportunity, he took it. And he's also showing the Devatas that you should also take this opportunity to give your whole life to Krishna. You shouldn't become distracted like you did before. Then he continues, O demigods, one who has no compassion for humanity in its suffering and does not sacrifice his impermanent body for the higher cause of religious principles or eternal glory is certainly pitied even by immovable beings, right? This sage is saying that one who's not willing to sacrifice his impermanent body for the compassion of all humanity, in the service of Krishna, is so pitiful. Even immovable beings like rocks actually feel sorry for this particular soul who's not willing to do this. He continues, if one is unhappy to see the distress of other living beings and happy to see their happiness, his religious principles are appreciated as imperishable by exalted persons who are considered pious and benevolent. Anyway, he keeps going on. His instructions are amazing. And then later, we find that Vritrasura, the so-called demon, is actually going to instruct Indra also. So we see everybody's basically preaching to the Devatas, but their response is, okay, yeah, we know this in theory. We know that Vishnu is Supreme Lord and one should sacrifice everything for him. But this is our service that was given by him, and we want to finish it off. They're materially attached, but at least they accept Vishnu in times of trouble, right? So this is a good start. But for us, we should be striving for this Atma Nivedana. In the purport of Canto 6, Chapter 10, Text 8, Srila Prabhupada said, one should join the Krishna consciousness movement following the example of such great personalities as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the 6 Goswamis, and before them, the great sage Dadichi. Instead of wasting one's life for temporary bodily comforts, one should always be prepared to give up one's life for better causes. After all, the body will be destroyed. Therefore, one should sacrifice it for the glory of distributing religious principles throughout the world. Right? So, in other words, when we say sacrifice one's life, it means whatever in our life is dear to us for our own personal sense enjoyment, we should give that up and only engage in Krishna service. We have to understand how every single thing that we come in contact with, how that can be engaged in Krishna service. And then we should do that properly. This is what it means by sacrificing oneself, right? Sacrificing the body, sacrificing the mind, sacrificing everything, right? It doesn't mean that one should light himself on fire, because that's not sacrificing the body. That's trying to, in most cases, trying to make some sort of political statement or whatever the case may be. But if one doesn't redirect one's consciousness first before leaving the body, one will get another body. So what was the point of getting rid of this one prematurely? We use what we have in Krishna's service. This is what this means. Then in text 6, same chapter, same canto, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, in human society, there are many institutions to help others, but because philanthropists do not know how to help others, their propensity for philanthropy is ineffectual. They do not know the ultimate goal of life, which is to please the Supreme Lord. If all philanthropic and humanitarian activities were directed toward achieving the ultimate goal of life, to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they would all be perfect. Humanitarian work without Krishna is nothing. Krishna must be brought to the center of all our activities. Otherwise, no activity will have value. None at all, right? We like to, when we think of things that are valuable, when we assign value to something, right? When we say, how valuable is this thing to you? Generally, when we weigh that value, we're thinking, okay, how does it serve me, right? If someone asks me, how valuable is this water bottle to you, Carucandra? And I have some sentimental attachment because a friend gave it to me, and, but it's also practical, when my mouth gets dry, I can, as long as it's full of water, I can, get the thirst. There's so many things. But if I'm directing these things only to me and how these things serve me, then it has no value. It's not actually value. That's not how we should assign value, right? To accept everything that is favorable and to reject everything that is not favorable. The first two of the 6 that we described earlier. This is how we should actually assign value. So I should think, okay, this possession that I have that I use every day, do I use it in Krishna's service? And if the answer is yes, that's good. Now the next question is, how much do I engage in Krishna's service? Am I engaging it always in Krishna's service, or am I only engaging it sometimes in Krishna's service, and the rest of the time I'm just, trying to enjoy something, entertainment or whatever the case may be? And if that's the answer, then we have to figure out how to, really focus on that portion that we are using it in Krishna's service and try to increase that and decrease the aspects of it that we are only using for our own personal sense of joy, right? This is how we purify our body, mind, words, etc. Right. So this is how we should assign value, whether how we can use something in Krishna's service, right? And we can only assign value for ourselves. We can't, just because we can't use something in Krishna's service doesn't mean someone else can't, right? So if I can't see a connection to Krishna in something and I reject it, which is properly, we should reject it if we are not using it in Krishna's service. But that doesn't mean that somebody else can't use the same thing in Krishna's service. So we shouldn't judge them like, I rejected that because I couldn't use it, so you also should reject it. No, if they're using it properly, then they shouldn't. So our value system should be based on whether something is actually, whether we are actually using it properly in Krishna's service effectively. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up a little here. The conclusion for today is that we must learn how to gradually give everything to the Supreme Lord via the process of sadhana bhakti. When we successfully do so, we will lose nothing and gain everything that we could never otherwise expect, as Srila Prabhupada concluded in the purport. The entire purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement was for its followers to redirect their consciousness from self-centric to God-centric, which means from material to spiritual. And that is the only way to attain real peace and everlasting bliss. Otherwise, we are just continuing this perpetual suffering in the material world. Sometimes we get a small cessation of that suffering and it almost feels like happiness, but it's temporary. And sometimes we think, okay, but it's worth it. You know, that little cessation of suffering, of distress, is actually worth it. You know, people will work 5-6 days a week just so they can have that one day of enjoyment. Or sometimes they'll work through the weekend just so that at some point they can take a vacation, so that for 1 week out of the entire year they can have some semblance of enjoyment, even though also there's so many things that are so many different types of suffering even there. Some things that they have to tolerate. It's never the perfect vacation, right? There's always things that are going on. So this is how we can actually attain real peace and everlasting bliss, actually properly using everything in Krishna's service. Isabhashamidam sarva. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments, any further discussions, reflections. I do not see any.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for a nice class. I would like to know which canto is that? Dadichi and Kasura's thing, you said?
I think it's the 6th, but let me check again.
6th canto?
Yeah, let me check one more time to make sure I'm giving you the right section. Yes, it'll be the 6th canto, 1st chapter. Of course, the story starts before that even, but
And you have something else in 10th canto also. No, I'm sorry. 10th chapter also. Is that right?
yes. Oh, maybe I'd labeled that wrong. It is the 10th chapter. I think when I hit the 0, I didn't push hard enough on that first one. Yeah, so
10th
sorry.
chapter and text 6.
It's the 10th chapter. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
And the other one is Harinam Chintamani, chapter 13.
Yeah, is it 13? Yeah. Also Jaiva Dharma chapter 25 and I think chapter 20 are also very good regarding Atmani Vedana. Wow, she's going to go back and read those. This is an example. Everyone should follow this example.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the nice class.
Thank you. Dronacharya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Charachandra Prabhu. Thank you for joining us all the way from Mayapur. It's really nice. I know there's a lot of devotees over there now, especially even from Philadelphia. I know there's a lot of devotees there.
Mahapremavesh Prabhu just spent some time with Vishnu Gada and Ganapati Prabhu's. Yeah.
Okay, good. So earlier on, you were first of all, great, wonderful points today in the class. Definitely, and for points that I needed to hear, and for the assembly of devotees, I believe it was really, really good to hear about this principle of surrender. Where did you listed? I think it was maybe 6 points earlier. I started with always remember, accept those things that are favorable to Krishna, reject those things that are unfavorable to Krishna, accepting Krishna as one's protector. Where were they? I've heard them before. I was trying to have a hard time to place.
That was in Harinam Chintamani chapter 13. That's the one that I read, but they're also those same 6 are also given elsewhere.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So I was wondering, based on one's ashram, how does the principle of surrender? I'm thinking that it would be, it may look a little different based on where one is in one's ashram. I guess the principles may be the same, but is there any variety in this of externally how surrender may appear based upon where one is in life? Both, I guess, in their spiritual development. Obviously, I think that would be quite clear, but within one's ashram and maybe even within one's varna, would it look a little different? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I just wanted to put that before you to see your
Yes,
thoughts on
thank you
that.
for that. Thank you for that. That's very important. So yeah, the principle in spiritual life is this, to surrender completely to Krishna. And so we don't actually know what that looks like. We don't. So there's this institution that trains us to understand what this looks like, right? Varnashram institution.
Which
So
isn't there.
each of the different categories is showing us how to surrender to Krishna. So ideally, obviously, we're starting from early age, and we're being trained by the guru at his place in brahmacharya. And we are given all of the proper information of how to surrender to the Lord. But most people, even after having all this information, they still need to experience it for themselves to understand, okay, that life is actually suffering, right? So, so they go and try to see if they can't, live some sort of successful life. Then instead of the guru teaching you these things, now the wife is teaching you these things, or the husband, depending on which one you are. And you're now learning through experience the things that you didn't quite learn in the brahmacharya ashram, right? Then if one is successful in the grihastha ashram, understanding these principles given in Shastra by the guru and through the examples of the sadhus, then we will become renounced and we will retire from society, right? This is vanaprastha. Now, one doesn't have to leave one's spouse at this time. Both husband and wife can retire from society, means they move outside of the village. They're not engaged in all the social dealings in the day-to-day life, but they're close enough by where the people of the village can go and seek spiritual guidance from them, but they're just focusing on spirituality now. They're not in the social scene. So that's the renounced order. And then after that, then, complete sannyas. So from an outsider's perspective, these things look very different, the concept of surrender. But as you mentioned, the principle is actually exactly the same. It's just wherever we're coming from, whatever proportions of the modes of nature that are covering us, the surrender will look very different. And gradually, as we peel these layers of modes of nature off, then our surrendering will even look different than our surrendering back, 10 years prior. So we can see that as we become purified, then we're able to surrender more, even deeper. So I don't know if it answered your question, but yeah, it looks different from an outsider's point of view, but the concept is the same. And it's just a matter of how well we understand it. And there's different ways of explaining that depending on where we're coming from. And so we're going to go through different circumstances in order to actually understand it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, Prabhu?
Yes, yeah, it does.
Something more?
Yeah, I mean, it always appears that in the phases of life where, vanaprastha or brahmacharya or sannyas, the principle of full surrender would seem more conducive. And I think initially people feel like that's true, and then they gravitate toward, doing that. Okay, I'm going to be a brahmacharya, I'm going to renounce the world initially, and then maybe then they realize that, okay, I may not be able to handle this, this, just because you don't have the obligations that you do in grihastha life, and those obligations can easily, take you away. I mean, it's you gotta you just have so many responsibilities. You got the bills, you got you got to get a job to support the bills, and you got to, you get the car, and you got the doctor's appointments and the activities, and then the social activities, so on and so on. And even by keeping Krishna in the center the best you can, even when you're, say doing preaching work and you're doing, maybe not just social activities, maybe they're preaching activities. It just seems like there's just so much pulling at you that, the surrender component of it, you kind of wonder, like, am I really surrendering to Krishna, or am I just surrendering to this, like, society?
Yeah.
And the appeal of, like, okay, if I didn't have to worry about any of this, if I didn't, I'm just serving the Lord, for all my waking hours, that's all I'm doing, and I don't have to worry about any of these obligations. It definitely seems appealing for the principle of surrender, but then it may not be internally possible to do that too. And I think that's where the struggle is. It's like, okay, I'd want to live this life, but I can't actually live this life.
Not until we become purified. So the whole thing is a purificatory process. Now, I want to mention that just because someone is a householder, it doesn't mean that they're not fully surrendered. There are instances where a householder has been fully surrendered. We can see examples of that. So just because you're married doesn't mean that you're attached. Now, I should also point out, because there's two sides of that coin, because there are also those who they get married and then all of a sudden they become averse, which is very different from detachment, right? Aversion means you're attached in the negative. You are actually attached to getting away from the situation because you understand that the situation is no good materially. So you're trying to go materially to some other situation. That's not detachment, right? Some people will say that and they'll think, I'm completely detached from my wife, but they're actually averse to their wife. And that's not favorable, right? Detached is good. If you're detached, it means that there's no attachment there personally, but it means you see her as a proper servant of Krishna, and therefore the relationship will be good. If you're detached from your wife, the relationship will actually be good because you're seeing her not as your property, you're seeing her as Krishna's servant, and you're treating her as such, right? And so no woman wants to be treated as someone's property, right? They'll tell you that, right? So we have to understand what detachment truly is. We can't mistake aversion for detachment. And we have to understand that if we're truly detached, we will actually be dealing with everything properly, right? Because we know, oh, it's not mine, it's Krishna's. It's not that, there's this common saying when someone rents a car, they say, don't be gentle, it's a rental. It's not yours, so don't worry about it. You just drive the heck out of it. And if it breaks, it's not your problem. So this isn't what we should be doing. It's Krishna's property. We should treat it nicely. Or another example, and I'm sure you can understand this one because you're there in the Philadelphia temple and you see that a lot of things have materially declined, the plumbing, the fixtures, the doors, things that once were in really, good, properly situated are now, just they weren't properly dealt with, and so now they're in bad shape. So oftentimes when someone moves into the temple, they're thinking, all right, well, this isn't my house, this is Krishna's house. And they don't take care of it properly. That's not how we should do it, though. We should think, okay, this is Krishna's property, therefore I should take the absolute best care of it. I should treat it better than if I thought it was my own. So if I'm in the bathroom and I go to turn the water on and the handle pops off, I don't say, oh, Krishna's mercy, and throw it behind me. No, I say, oh, I better do something about this because this is Krishna's faucet and it should work properly for the devotees. For me, whatever, I can tolerate whatever, but the other devotees, they should have, Krishna, they should all have nice things, right? So oftentimes we mistake aversion for detachment, and we absolutely cannot do that and expect to actually go back to God. We can't trick Krishna in this matter. We actually have to be detached. And as I said, detached means you're dealing with everything properly, right? Because you know to whom it belongs, and therefore you're dealing with it the way that he would want you to deal with it. So this is detachment. So whether you're a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, whether you're a brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra, one has to learn how to appropriately use everything properly for Krishna, and that is detachment. And each of these varnas and ashrams help us to understand how to see the relationship, the sambandha, the relationship between whatever we're using, ourselves, and the Supreme Lord. What is that relationship, and how do we properly engage in that relationship, right? And when we do it properly, like Bali Maharaj did, then, you know, he gives everything to Krishna, and now Krishna, he appreciates that so much that he stands at his door at all times. There he is. He's his doorkeeper. Generally in America, the doorkeeper isn't an honorable job, you know. A doorman, I mean, some people treat the doorman nicely, but most people do not. So we see that Krishna takes all sorts of seemingly strange positions to protect and reciprocate with his devotees. He'll take the form of a pig, which is mostly known as filthy, right? Supreme Lord, what are you talking about? It's a pig, you know, with tusks. It's a wild boar. You know, how could that be the Supreme Lord? Oh, because he's reciprocating with his devotee Bhumi Devi, who's, you know, who was put into the water so he can pick her up with the curve of his nose, right? So, yes. So when we properly see everything, then nothing is bewildering, right? The demons become bewildered. Krishna is a pig, and, you know, all these things. No, all these things are not only possible, they're obvious. Once one sees everything and how it's used in Krishna service, one understands, oh, it's obvious. Yes, this is Krishna doing these things. Did that help? You want to try it, Prabhu?
Yeah, great points, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing them. That was really good.
Thank you, thank you. And is there anything else? I see that Mukti Datri has turned on her video. Did you have something to add, Mataji?
This is really nice, Prabhu. You give the example, you know, like this is like a quality of Krishna. I think, like in Bhagavad Gita, he said like he's doing everything, but also in the same time he's aloof from everything. So we have to like get that quality. Krishna.
Yes, yes, very good. Thank you for adding that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Now, oh, yeah, I set my clock to America, so I would know. Yes, it's 8:59. So it's time to wrap up. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad
Jai.
Bhagavatam ki jai,
Jai.
Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai. Yeah. Please, Vanchakalpa Vishakita Sindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanavya Please give our best to Ravinda Shri Prabhu and Mother Sudamani.
Thank you, I will. Jai.
Thank you,
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Hare Krishna.